All right, and we are back as well as the MCU in theaters. Black Widow is now out, and this is our spoiler review. Nick, let's get right into our initial thoughts. Before we get super into spoilers, what's your kind of non-spoiler review of this?
This was a very strange watching experience for me just because there were moments I really enjoyed. There were a lot of moments there was like an even amount of moments I liked and I didn't like, and it was like just intercut within each other. So I'd be like, oh yes, that was really good, and that'd be brought down and be back up. And I mean, let's see, just Florence Pugh does great with the role of Elena Belova. David Harbour, always a reliable guy, as Red Guardian. Um, the first, what was it, like 20 minutes, I were my favorite part of the movie, to specify that. And it, like, not to not make a joke out of it, but like it was a literal like, oh, they had us in the first half. Not gonna lie, because I thought it was going somewhere that I really liked. It didn't, and not saying that it necessarily ended badly, but I was like, oh, it's not where I initially thought it was going. But it was just a very just like interesting experience, especially seeing as how like this is a film that was released later than it was intended. Also released later than, let's face it, it should have been. This should have A Black Widow movie should have been made far earlier. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts on this before we get really into spoilers is I think this film is really strong through its first act, and its
Mhm.
second act is pretty good.
Mhm.
It's not great, but it's good enough. And I think this film honestly kind of falls apart in its third act. And we'll get into more of the
Yeah.
why. But I really love Florence Pugh, and it's really interesting. I really love all the characters: Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Scarlett Johansson,
Rachel Weisz,
Rachel Weisz. I mean, she was fine. Her role wasn't really that.
bit smaller,
Uh,
yeah, than everyone
yeah,
else.
it was an important role, but it wasn't really a role that was given a lot of depth to it.
Yeah.
And I really love those opening 10-15 minutes that you're talking about.
Can
I
we
think that was great.
can we start there? Because like I remember like not having like I had like just sort of like perfectly set, at least I thought were perfectly set expectations. And then the first like just opening sequences, I was like, oh, this is not at all what I was expecting from the movie. And I was very like, I thought the whole like I like
This,
I just the whole like Ohio sequence, I thought that was like such a perfect way to like, because we've known Natasha for how many years, and now all of a sudden we're throwing in this backstory and these critical back characters, but you get all of that very quickly. It's a very exciting sequence. You see just like um I think it also sets up like Florence Pugh's character very well as like the most innocent of them all. And then just that opening title sequence. First I was like, I didn't even realize Marvel was doing title sequences now. They've never done that before. But this one, I was like, this is dark as hell. I was like, oh my God, this is like a really like you get like it's technically information we've known for a while, but like just the way it's presented and like the song choice, and it's like, oh, this is a very like intense opening to this side of the MCU in this particular characters and series of events.
yeah, I will say here, this is like the official point where we are hitting spoilers, full on spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, now is the point to turn around, watch the movie, and then come back. But I would say that one of the things that really stood out to me about that sequence was just kind of how they built the relationship really well. And while I think this sequence still has the problem that this whole film kind of has of not being quite tight enough in the edit, like a lot of scenes I've noticed could have been 20-30 seconds shorter.
Yeah.
Uh, and, that's a nitpick, but over a whole film, that adds up.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Understood.
but I really love this opening scene and the tone it sets, and it really gives you a good idea of the relationship of these characters in this kind of adopted family.
Right.
And I think that really set the tone coming forward. We go back to present day, and Natasha has fooled General Ross again, right?
Yep.
Because they somehow believed that she would be stupid enough to have the tracker on her suit and still have the suit. Like,
Right.
come on,
You know.
it's not that easy.
Yeah.
Uh,
I thought in a way it's funny. I kind of wish we spent a little more time of her like being alone because I feel like they were there and then there was Mason and he's like no they have their banter and then like it feels like 5 seconds later Taskmaster like hits her car. I think I would have loved to see like a Natasha that feels like everyone is either imprisoned in the raft at this time or like on the run and like we get references to her state, but I would love to see just her like on her own, like even if it was something like having to make a grocery trip and she's like having to like keep her head down or like someone's like bad mouthing Team Cap and it's like I thought that would have been an interesting place to do it. I mean it was I don't know I was fine with it. I just wish they did a little more. I can't remember his actor's name at the moment. Whoever played Mason, he was fine in like the total 5 minutes he was in the movie. Yeah, he was he's all right, just the typical MCU banter. The first Taskmaster fight was probably my favorite Taskmaster action sequence in the movie, probably because like it's it's low-key the one time we actually see Taskmaster like fight someone and not like fight from a truck or like whatever. It was just like a solid one-on-one fight. There was a lot of cool little bits, just like Natasha like spins around and like flips back on her feet and like Taskmaster does the exact same thing and they land at the same time and I was like that's pretty cool. That's Taskmaster. And I don't know, it was just a nice effective villain like in action moment. Keeping it vague as of the moment though, unfortunately it doesn't last beyond that, but we'll get we'll get there as we continue on.
yeah, this first fight sequence was the bomb. Like, it was so cool. The
Yeah.
way Taskmaster just fights, and he every time Taskmaster hits, she feels so like undefeatable.
Right. I just wanted to shout out the moment where like she like hooks him up like Batman style with like the rope, but he cuts it off and he swings towards her with a sword. I thought that was really cool uh sequence and I don't know, I love a good just two characters, just them in the area, just fighting. There was no one around to help. It was just generally Natasha on her own. Um it was just a very cool sequence and uh one of I don't know that kind of goes nowhere from there but
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
move on. We can move on.
So then we cut to Budapest and Florence Pugh's character at separate times, but Florence Pugh's hit with this antidote from another one from the Red Room, and essentially, she becomes a free-willed person and is hunted down by the rest of the Red Room. She hides in Budapest, where Black Widow used to have a hideout slash safe house. And what do we happen upon? They meet each other. They have a really cool fight scene, which I was a big fan of. Uh, Big Theme is really great opening fight scenes. I think they did a really good job setting the tone from an action standpoint.
Yeah.
And then we get this kind of reveal of what's going on, even though we kind of known already, so it feels a little bit repetitive, but for the most part, it worked well. And we got this cool introduction. What did you think about that introduction and then kind of moving forward through the end of the scene where they're actually in Budapest?
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on what you said, the fight was done very well. I especially love like not even the fight itself. Natasha's like at the door, and like Florence Pugh is like, "I know you're there." Like I thought that was just like oh yeah, they're trained together. They know exactly what they'll do. Fight was great. They do. I have to say, like they do like struggle a bit with exposition in this first act. Just like oh like you know there's this guy who like controls the red room who was dead but apparently is not dead. There's also like oh yeah you killed his daughter. You know that's a whole thing. And they made a big point in like interviews like oh yeah we're gonna find out what happened in Budapest. And I feel like there was a bit of a disconnect from that one line in the Avengers to what was actually depicted, because in the Avengers they made it seem like it was like a funny thing or like a I don't know, the way it comes off as kind of like a joke. But here I'm like, this was a way darker situation than it appeared to be. That's not necessarily a complaint. I just wanted to say that. Um, but uh, I like the opening scene. I like the chase. It felt um, it just felt like very cool, like a little very Jason Bourne-y, just them like on the run and then them into cars and Taskmaster showing up in her tank thing. Like I thought it was just a pretty cool like sequence. I will say also though, when Natasha like falls off like the tower or whatever, and she kind of like lands on her feet, I feel like there's a it's part of like an sort of issue with this film where like I'm not sure where her power scale is because sometimes especially in the third act, I'm like, I don't know if you'd survive that, but I'm like, okay, I know you don't die in this one at least, so I'll roll with it for right now. But overall, I thought it was a fun, just like classic, just foot chase and then car chase. A lot of Jason Bourne vibes going on there.
I will say, as soon as the Red Room gets
Hmm.
involved and they crash into the safe house,
Yeah.
it kind of went a little bit downhill until Taskmaster came back in.
Hmm.
For me, I just thought some of the action was shot kind of weirdly.
Fair. Okay.
Uh, I think is the right way to put it. Where it seemed like they were cutting around being a little bit
Yeah.
more violent, and they definitely could have gone away with PG-13 and a little bit more violent.
Yeah.
Um, and with the smoke, sometimes in that hall in the place, it was hard to see what was going on, which I
Yeah.
get from like a realistic point of view. But also, you need to make it a little bit more clear to your audience what
You
exactly
gotta
is happening.
when your heroes are dressed in black and your villains are dressed in black and you are covered in smoke, you are gonna lose your heroes. And yes, I did notice that the editing also seemed to be very like they just I don't know they went with the classic we'll cut here, we'll cut here, we'll cut here, and we'll hope we'll just stitch it together. Except I don't think it necessarily was stitched together all that well. Um, and yeah, I will say the smoke didn't help matters just because everyone's dressed the same, so it's easy to
Yeah.
get them lost.
Yeah, and I love the chasing on the rooftop scene, the big pillar that they are able to make fall down. That part's all great.
Mhm.
And we get to Taskmaster just going off through the city in this tank. Just I love that part where it's just like
Yeah.
Taskmaster does not care at all what's going on. And I love this idea that the Red Room is trying to stay quiet, yet Taskmaster is just
Fair.
destroying a whole
Yeah.
entire city. It's like two things don't quite add up here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, like this kind of seems like an Avengers level threat, kind of.
I
But
feel like at this point, there's been enough like, oh yeah, cars are getting wrecked in the city. It's another Tuesday.
yeah, yeah.
uh, no.
But I really like that whole sequence. I like how they get chased at the car flips
Right.
into the train station. I thought that was a really cool idea of just transitioning from one set piece to another.
Mhm.
And just how Taskmaster uses different Avengers powers, throwing the shield like Cap.
Hawkeye.
Um, yeah, Hawkeye's
Oh,
bow and
right.
arrow. And later on, we'll talk about the little mix of Black Panther.
Mhm.
I think it's all really cool and how they interpreted that and how that Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh get out of the situation. I
Right.
thought that was also really smart.
Yeah. I did think it was very clever that she was like, oh yeah, this is where me and Hawkeye like hid out, and you see their like games of tic tac toe. I thought that was a very like cool just little bit of just seeing like, oh yeah, there's a history there. Again, I don't necessarily like the way they made that transition from the one like sort of comedic line in the Avengers to this, but I did like just seeing like, oh yeah, this was used. This is like her making use of what she remembers from before type thing.
I will say, I feel like Budapest kind of plays out like a lot of stuff in Solo, a Star Wars story,
Yeah,
where they
I got
feel
you.
this need to over explain stuff that was mentioned about their backstory.
Right.
Uh, I think a lot of times it's just you need to tell the story you're telling, and you can't worry about anything else.
Yeah.
And I think they over explained Budapest for something that just didn't seem like it quite fit in the story. Like they could have just had the safe house in Budapest and getting out and not needed that.
There's and it's just a common issue with this franchise is the telling not showing. And like technically, yes, we saw a flashback, but it's just like, oh yeah, like I needed to kill him to get out, and now he has a daughter, even though we've never even met the father, or the father's never been name dropped before. It's like, oh okay, I'll that's a lot of exposition to ingest, but I'll go with it. And yeah, like when you do, especially when you do like I guess prequel type films, you shouldn't be beholden to like checking off. Oh, we have to explain where Han got his dice. We have to explain what happened in in Budapest. Explain what she was doing before. Like, um, if you get to those points, it should come organically and not feel like a checklist type thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And I think let's move on. We'll skip through some of the kind of just flowy stuff and transitiony stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and let's go to the prison break
Yeah.
of Red Guardian.
Wait, actually, just before we want to get my hands down, my favorite moment is this film. Even though I think in retrospect it's kind of awkwardly placed, but this just the scene in the store where Florence Pugh is like, "What is that thing you do?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" She like gets on the floor and she's like, "That like hair flip." I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was like a solid like. I like when superhero content like pokes fun at superhero like tropes, and I just thought that was great of like the younger sister character, and Florence Pugh was like sold that moment, so delivered that whole scene really well. I just wanted to like shout that out.
No, that's a great point, and I think we probably shouldn't have skipped over the scene that comes after where they're talking while they're having
Oh
beers
yeah.
and they steal the car. I think that was a really great character scene
Mhm.
and a really necessary stop and pause that I feel like they could have used a bit more in the beginning of Act One, like that.
Right. I got
Um, but I think that scene worked really well. Transitions into the fun scene about Florence Pugh's new vest that she's really
yeah.
loving.
Mhm.
I love how she's like all the pockets, like it's so sick.
Right.
And Natasha was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool."
Mhm.
And we get on, we're going. Red Guardian, we're breaking him out of prison.
Yep.
How did you think about that whole scene in the reintroduction? I'd say to Red Guardian in the story.
I kind of wish we got more, which is why, like, just to jump ahead to the end very quickly, like, I'm kind of glad, like, I guess he's still technically around in the MCU because I'd love to see more from him because they make a reference in the opening sequence of like him putting back the suit on, and the next thing you know, he's in prison, and like he says something in the helicopter after where he's like, I don't really know why I'm in here. They just threw me in there, and it was just a little weird context wise, but I was like, it was just a little weird context wise to just be like, oh, he's in prison now for reasons, and like he's also their Russian Captain America, whatever that is supposed to like represent or entail. Just a little confusing context wise. I mean, it was an entertaining enough detour. Maybe went on a bit longer than it had to, but yeah, that's my general thoughts on it.
Yeah, some of the things that are confusing to me is the establishment of what the Red Room is like and what the guy, I can't remember his name, who is the head of the
Drake,
Red Room,
Yeah, Drake.
Dreykov. Like the establishment of his character is if you're no longer of use to him, he kind of just kills people.
Mm-hmm.
He seems very ruthless throughout the film, and the idea that he'd keep Red Guardian around in a prison just seems kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that kind of hit me right away as they had given exposition in the first act as to who Dreykov was.
Right.
Like he doesn't like loose ends, uh, and it seemed like that would have been a very easy loose end to clean up.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why like the scene where like David Harbour is like complaining. He's like, "Oh, maybe like I told him I didn't like his mustache, or I was like too like I didn't show up to a party." I was like, "That's I guess this is entertaining, but like it's not a definitive explanation of like why the Russian Captain America, presumably the symbol of the Soviet Union's in a prison. It's just sort of
Right.
like, oh, you're here now. Like, go with that."
Let's get into the actual prison break. Did you like that whole action sequence?
Again, it went on maybe a bit longer than it had to. Like, I was like, there's a moment where like all the prisoners are coming out, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a 1v100 type, like just Red Guardian like barreling through. but like he's just like jumping around, or he's like just standing around for a lot of the prison fight. And I was like, okay, I sure. Hands down, again, the best moment is like the little cuts to Florence Pugh just giving commentary, and she eventually like takes out a rocket launcher. But I don't know. By the time it got to the avalanche, I was like, we could have maybe shaved off a few minutes off of this. At the very least, just give us like a Red Guardian, show us the Russian Captain America. The most I remember him doing is he tried to climb up, but then he got tasered and he fell on his back. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of wimpy way to get knocked down, but
Right.
okay.
I mean, it leaves you with questions though, right? Because
Mhm.
we've seen Cap get tasered and he takes it
Yeah.
easily. So
Right.
it leaves you with questions like, oh, interesting. Was this super soldier not as powerful as Cap was?
Mhm.
And little things like that, that moment kind of explores. But you're also like, he's a super soldier and a taser knocks him all the way down. Like, really?
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of a double edged sword there. But I do like the idea of that sequence. I agree with you. It takes too long. I feel like the avalanche should have been introduced earlier to
Mhm.
kind of shorten the sequence and get the pacing going. Because you're right, Red Guardian does spend a lot of time just kind of standing there,
Mhm.
and Natasha just is kind of knocking out unnamed bad guys back to
Yeah.
back to back,
Yeah.
and it feels like they were they felt like they needed another action sequence, and they were just kind of trying to extend it longer than it needed to go. I think
Yeah.
sometimes just short and sweet can be the best way to do it.
And it's funny because like I like at least I'm saying this because I remember back in like our Falcon and Winter Soldier review with the Zemo, I remember saying like I wish they showed the actual breakout and but like compared to this, like the Falcon and Winter Soldier was like over like just smoothly like just like communicated, and here it's taking too long. I just like think it's funny just the differing situations and different but like same scenarios just done in a different way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Let's move on. So they essentially they go to Rachel Weisz's character's uh,
House.
house,
Yeah.
and we get this whole family reunion. What
Mm-hmm.
did you think of the whole family reunion all the way leading up to when they're all captured?
Well, one this is again, this is not another complaint or even like a nitpick. It's just something funny. I thought like I couldn't take Rachel Weisz seriously as the mother figure just because Rachel Weisz looks very young. She looks great for her age, and but like I remember like I would watch the trailers and I'd be like, oh, they're like she's another like older sister Black Widow, and they're like, no, she was actually her mom figure, and I was like, that doesn't look right at all. But I don't know, that was just something funny I thought because again she looks very young, and she looks very close in age to Johansson. um but that was just one thing. I thought the family dinner moment was a bit of a mixed bag for me because they would say something really cool and then something like some I don't know, like they joke would be said and then they go back to something serious, and I was like, just stick with the I don't know, stick with a flow. Is it an awkward family reunion, or is this like a like discussion of how like this family was a family but also like a fake family type thing? Um like I'm trying to remember like specific moments. I do like the whole like Rachel Weisz is like trying to like hand out food, and like Harbor's like very happy to be here, and like Natasha and Florence Pugh are very obviously not happy. And I like that it builds up to Florence Pugh going like, no, it was real for me. Like it like this meant something to me, and like to see Natasha so coldly like kind of like blow it all off. I thought that it built to a very great point. It was just a lot of like random like the whole like you're slouching like sit up. I was like, okay. Like I don't know, just like it was all right. Just wish they picked the flow, I guess.
I really love the build up.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they kind of go into their separate rooms,
Hmm.
they suffer from the Marvel problem is maybe what I should call it, where
Hmm.
they have these really great dramatic moments that they build up to throughout the film, and then they hit you with the joke that's funny
But it
and it
undermined.
works in the moment, but it undermines the whole dramatic tension,
Yep.
and it undermines getting it's like you're building and building and building and building to that final point, and then it's just
Take it.
undercut with a
Yeah.
joke, and it makes that next dramatic moment just not quite as impactful as it could be. And I
Yeah.
think that really happened with David Harbour and Florence Pugh.
Yeah. Are you talking about though, like when you start singing American Pie or whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel the same. I felt it even like earlier, like they in the helicopter, Harbor's trying to like catch up with them, and like Florence is like, "Oh, I went through a involuntary hysterectomy," and I was like, "That sounds like a pretty dark subject." But they like, the way it's like written and delivered, it comes off as like they're poking fun at it, and I was like, "That's a weird way to describe such a very like intense event."
right.
Um, I was actually kind of okay with the like. I mean, they set it up very kind of like obviously in the beginning, and they're playing it during their getaway. Um, I thought it was sweet, if only like all of a sudden they're getting attacked, and then he gets like there's the trank gag where he's like shot like a bunch of times, and I was like, there's a I can't process anything that just happened before because we're already moving on to the next scene. I can't even remember what Natasha and Melina were talking about in that moment. There was like the photo book or whatever, but I don't know. Yeah, it was a very the family reunion was a mixed bag, especially considering how like very immediately they set things up in the beginning and like just assumedly like how assumedly how awkward and like intense it must be to reunite with these like fake family members, like how it could be. And I was like, there's just I feel like they were jumping between tones a bit very erratically.
Yeah, I agree. And it's less of the My Miss American Pie, which, by the way, great song, great song,
Very true.
great song choice. But it's more of just like throughout the whole scene that I think they hit you with jokes at kind of dramatic moments, and then when you get there, it's like, come on, like if there weren't so many jokes before that moment, it would be fine.
Yeah.
And the moment works within that particular scene, and then he's just like hit with the dart, tranquilizing dart, and then he's hit by like 10 more.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, this guy's not stupid. Like, he
Yeah.
knows to duck.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, I've definitely seen this in Moana. Like,
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I was like, this is again, I was like, this is the Russian Captain America.
yeah. It's like,
Stood around during the prison fight, got just tranked. I was like, oh man.
I
David
understand he
Harbour,
might be a little washed up, but
yeah.
come on.
Yeah, I was like, David Harbour deserves like more as like to do the action hero than just be the, be the dad of the group. Which he did really well. It's just, you know, again, he's literally standing around
Right.
for stuff. I'm trying to remember. Oh, that pig scene wasn't bad. When she like turns off its tells it to stop
Yeah.
breathing, it just really took me out because I was like, is she gonna bring that pig back? Is he gonna come back to life? Because it was just like sitting there and she was just talking like nothing was like wrong. I thought that was just a very crazy moment.
Yeah, that definitely was. To say the least, it was a crazy moment.
Yeah.
Um, let's move on into the third act, right? We get that we finally get into the red room,
Yeah.
right? It's this space station, not space station, but it's this aircraft that's been flying up in the air that somehow nobody has realized. Tony Stark with his advanced technology hasn't been able, like, oh, what's that thing in the sky? It's not like I don't have satellites all over the planet.
He just he missed it during his morning flights. He was like, oh, that
Yeah.
must be whatever.
This idea of keeping a low profile and then they do these things that are such high profile, I think was really just kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah. And
And
yeah. I mean, like
frustrating.
I mean, like I've seen enough bizarre like villain bases from like the James Bond movies. There was a guy who had his whole thing underwater, but I remember seeing that and I was like, oh boy, here we go. It's a literal
Yeah.
flying fortress. I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what is this, Hydra 2.0? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just think from here is where I start to get frustrated. So Nick, let's kind of get into this, and I want to see if you're the same way or maybe you have a different reaction than I do, because I want to be fair to the film. What were your thoughts on kind of how the third act plays out before we get the ship falling apart, final action sequence?
I thought in retrospect I should have I accounted for they would this being the spy movie of the MCU, they would have pulled a Mission Impossible like face reveal. That happened. I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like I should have seen it coming. It was too good not to pull off. I'm just trying to think. Like it just feels like those she meets Dreykov, and this is like this is the most screen time Dreykov has in the whole movie. He's just been a name at this point, and I thought like it felt odd in a way. I'm like, oh, this is the jackass that has has literally been controlling so many like people's lives, and like they're trying to bring up this big like sense of resentment towards them. It just feels a bit like given that this is the first time they're laying eyes on each other, at least like within the movie, not counting the flashback, it just feels a little, just a tad bit hollow because we're just going on word of mouth. The other three characters are literally sitting around again for most of that initial conversation. Um, I don't know. It was just another sort of like just like again sort of a lot of more just exposition in a way, just being like, oh, like I have widows across the globe and I'm like going to activate them for reasons or something. I didn't know what I thought. We were fine just like he's controlling all these girls without permission, like that is bad enough alone, but then he was like, I'm gonna destabilize world governments or whatever. I was like, okay. I don't know where that came from, but okay. um I did like the whole idea, a bit far out there, but this is a comic book movie of like she can't actually hit him because of whatever biological deterrent. I thought that was a very interesting idea. um but then of course they do like two more flashbacks and you see like it was the plan all along. I was like, oh, more Mission Impossible twists back and forth. I don't know how you felt about that. I do remember that like by the time I got to like the third like flashback and it's like you just need to like break your nose to break the pheromones. I was like, okay. So they just, I was like, I was getting a little like tired of it. I don't know how you felt about them taking that Mission Impossible route with the storytelling.
I was very tired of it by the
Okay.
first time,
Oh,
let
okay.
alone the second or third.
Mhm.
I think it's more because that's a trope that you got to play your hand perfectly, and you got to do it once. Don't do the we had a you show the plan beforehand,
Mhm.
not in a flashback as the movie's running.
Mhm.
Then the plan goes off and there's a flaw, and then you show that there was a second aspect of that plan.
Yeah.
You don't flash back to the what the plan was, then have the plan go wrong, and then flash back again, because then it's like, come on, you're in the past too much. You're not moving the story forward, you're going backwards.
Yeah. And
um, and that just frustrated me.
like when she like was like getting him to hit her, I was like, oh, like I was like, okay, so this must be a way to like this is her thinking on her feet, and then she like slams her face into the desk, and it was like, oh, that was the plan all along. And I was like, okay. I was like, there's a lot of hoops that I have to like accept to jump through. That Rachel Weisz was just like, here's all the information you need, and here's all the cheat codes you need to stop the bad guy, and like again like a lot like the other three widow family members are literally sitting or like laying down, and it's just interesting because like this is the third act, this is like the climax, and I remember feeling like there is no energy happening at this moment. We are in a flying fortress against one of the biggest like jackasses I've seen in the MCU, and like I feel like nothing is like I'm not all that engaged with the moment. I don't know. Again, if like this could have just been me going into it, but I don't know. What about you?
I was the exact same way, if not more so.
Okay.
This is the point in the movie where they give you too much time to think about what's going on that's wrong with the movie.
Yeah.
And in this exposition dump, that just God, like, come on, come on. I know you guys are good at making movies. Like, you got the people working on these films are really talented.
Indeed.
Like, you can deliver exposition in better ways than this, and it doesn't need to have world-ending stakes.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
You
And
can
like
tell an intimate story, and you can be on this big ship without having to have the end of the world introduced in. The Red Room is enough of stakes for this story.
Yeah, and like I think back on like uh I'm trying to think of like other small scale like third like Iron Man 1 was just a very straightforward Jeff Bridges suited up and he's like causing havoc. Like we kept it confined to that state. Even like Black Panther, yes, Killmonger wanted to send ships out to like arm the people, but like it still felt very much like this is a Wakandan like international like inter-country threat than like a global thing. And I just remember rolling my eyes when he like you activate or he tries to activate all the widows and he's like they're all gonna like again they're all gonna like kill the politicians and the engineers. And I was like, God, why? I was
Right.
like, well, I was like, I don't even know what like your purpose is. It's not like I was like the Soviet Union fell, Ronald
Yeah.
Reagan brought the wall down. I don't know what you're still doing. And if it was like a mercenary thing, like oh he's like selling the wit, like I that was something I thought of. Like that would have been a much better angle if he was like a mercenary, like selling the services of the widows, than just him doing something. I would have preferred that. Um, and it's just also the classic like I don't know what you want as a villain. I at least knew like whatever his face was from Guardians of the Galaxy wanted to like destroy Xandar or whatever.
Right.
I was like,
Right.
okay, that's that. There you go. That's their goal. I don't know what your goal is thus far, and like again, like you said, the Red Room was enough on its own as a propelling factor that now here where they're just like waiting around, it just feels like we're doing a lot with no context or substance.
It left me asking this question. If they had just said that Dracov had been killed and Taskmaster was the big bad,
Mhm.
wouldn't it have made so much more sense and made Taskmaster more compelling?
For sure.
So Taskmaster's trying to kill Natasha
Yep.
to avenge her father's death.
Mhm.
That scene where she has those burns feels more impactful because you killed her father, right? Her last connection.
Yeah.
And it feels like in that story and what they're trying to do thematically, Taskmaster being a son as opposed to a daughter may have helped
Mhm.
because that's still overarching theme of men trying to
Control.
control
Yeah.
women, and it kind of like the guy kind of plays I once kind of like a Harvey Weinstein esque role.
Mhm. I
I
understand
think
the
him kind of what they're going for in a more subtle way, if you know what
yeah,
I
I
mean.
understand the metaphor, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
can we talk about Taskmaster just
yeah,
just for a little bit? Because I remember watching the big reveal scene happen and everything that happened after, and I was like, what a waste! What a
yeah.
waste of a villain. And I was like, I'm not like a Taskmaster scholar by any means. I feel like I have to. The most I know of him came from the Spider-Man PS4 game, where I felt he was portrayed much better. Strangely, even though he was a side mission, but I was like, okay, here you are, like you're fighting, you're like a lot of Terminator vibes, and he's like, she's actually my daughter, and I plug a chip into her or something, and I think Olga Kurilenko is the actress. She didn't even say a word, even with her mask off, and I was like, this feels like such a like waste. Like if they wanted to keep the Terminator vibe, they could have kept it, and I think it would have worked out really well because it's Taskmaster. But then I think it just got very convoluted with, oh, it's her father's alive, she's alive, she's also like got a computer in her brain type thing, and I was like, I don't know what's happening with this villain at this point. Um, what were your thoughts with the whole situation?
It's just frustrating because Taskmaster is such a cool villain. One, sometimes Marvel makes things about technology that don't need to be technology based.
Yeah,
Like Taskmaster could have just had a photographic memory,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And is able to memorize these different fight styles and counter it. I
Mhm.
think that's really cool. And I think the applications of that can be really cool against different Avengers, right? Like
Yeah,
Taskmaster isn't enough to be an Avengers level threat, but Taskmaster is really cool and smart in combat and provides really unique challenge.
yeah.
We don't get that really after the first act, or the first act and a half.
Well,
And I
that
think it
yeah,
really could have used that going on.
and I think it's also because like after the Budapest chase, Taskmaster just drops out of the movie for like what feels like forever until it's then they're hit with the reveal and excuse me, then she's go to fight, then she's sent off to fight Red Guardian. Is like she just drops out for like a majority of the screen time. And I'm like, again, like I'm trying to think of what other like weak villains, like I don't know, like Whiplash and Iron Man 2 stuck around relatively enough in the middle acts of the movie. Taskmaster just literally just disappears for no explanation at all. Um, I don't know. I think what I'm hoping for, and our fellow movie reviewer Jeremy John said this as well. If if the Mandarin can get a redo after Iron Man 3 and Shang-Chi, then Taskmaster stands a chance of doing the same a few years down the road. So if we hold out hope, then maybe the true Taskmaster will show up, hopefully.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. The character is such a cool character, and I feel like he's well. They
Yeah.
changed genders for the film is really underutilized,
Yeah.
and I think in the end, the whole resolution of she accepts Black Widow. I just feel like no. Why would you accept a person who almost killed you?
Right.
Right? Like that makes no sense to me. Like you would still hate Black Widow. It would still set her up as a villain who could be used in the future of the MCU in different stories.
Yep.
It just seemed kind of counterproductive to what this whole story had built. And it felt very out of character. I think it would have been very much more tragic and would have left more,
Yeah. Impact.
weighed more on
Yeah.
Natasha uh, if she had said, no, I still hate you,
Right.
serum or not.
And well, one, we never got a final like Black Widow versus Taskmaster fight, which felt, which like it felt worse than like Hulk not getting a rematch with Thanos. Like I was okay with that not happening, but here I was like, come on, she's the, you know, she kicked her ass on the bridge earlier. Like there should be a as the final boss of the story, you know. Um, and like I feel like in a certain way, like I see what they were trying to do, like as like a positioning Taskmaster, not just as like oh she's like they gender swapped her, but also like as a mirror to Natasha. I just wish like just gave her more to do. And like Olga Kurylenko, I've only seen her in Quantum of Solace, but she was great there. Like I'm sure she's a great actress and everything else. It's just but she showed up to make to scowl for like 5 seconds and then she put the mask back on and I was like, oh man, like I think what you said earlier was right. Taskmaster should have been head of the Red Room. Dreykov should have been off the map. Everything could have been streamlined much more from there.
Yeah, I think it would have made for a more efficient story, and it would have just made Taskmaster feel more important to the film and really create it just like two characters could be one. I think is the best way
Yeah,
of putting it.
that's great. That's great.
And I really wish they showed more of the Red Guardian versus Taskmaster fight. I like the resolution, but it's like, come on, this dude's a
Yeah,
super soldier, like, and you're just blocking the punches left, right,
yeah.
no, like that dude hits harder than that.
I
And I think there's a way that Taskmaster can analyze and outsmart
that's smart and right.
without just blocking and countering. Like it has to be through using equipment and gadgetry. It's like how Spider-Man sometimes outsmarts people, or
Right.
Black Widow outsmarts characters that are more strong than
I
her.
was I was so mad when they kept getting away because I was like, oh, these are the heavies. The heavies are fighting. We're finally gonna see David Harbour, full costume and everything. They would show like 3 seconds and cut away, and I'm like, oh man. Like, also, the maybe it was just like my TV, the way my TV was showing it, but the red light was screwing with me. I did not like the
Sure.
like red light that was like just blaring in like every shot. I was like it was driving me nuts. I did not like I felt like I just couldn't like tell what was happening. I was like, I get it, haha, red room. Like
Yeah.
there was maybe in Dreykov's room it was okay, but it was like all the alarms are like red and it's covering everything, and I was like, I just can't see what's going on.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder if that was a TV problem.
yeah.
Because for me, I watched it in theaters and I didn't have that problem at all.
Okay.
So
That might have just been me then. Okay.
yeah, And we get this ending, and General Ross is coming, but she doesn't get on the ship. She's like, "Oh, I got this."
Yeah,
And then they decide not to show it. It's like, does she really? Like, what is? Does she have an escape plan? It's like, I get it. She's a superhero. Like, she'll find a way. But I don't know. It's like I feel like getting on the ship and being family once again, and the idea that they split apart after would have been it would have felt more complete for an arc, that her not accepting that family as her family,
yeah, and
to in
then
the final part finally accepting it, and then we cut to her on her own, going to break her fellow Avengers out of jail with Captain America. Like that would have felt like the way to resolve that story.
yeah, it's like here we are. We've been talking for however long about things that could have been streamlined, and the one thing they do streamline is that ending. And I was like, this is the thing that should have gone on for at least like 3 more minutes, because it's like boom, Taskmaster is defeated or redeemed question mark, and then the other widows show up, and Ross is on his way, and Natasha's like, all right, I'm heading out. I'll see you guys soon. And
Right.
like they kind of like cover up, or like they kind of like do what you're saying with her line at in the next scene when she's like, I have two families. But I was like, this doesn't feel the same, because I know you won't be reuniting with these characters, like in the way of the timeline. You won't be seeing them again. So when she's like, oh, I have two families, I'm like, you're not. It doesn't feel the same, because you know it just feels like a very like shallowly written cap off to the movie. And just for her, yeah, and just for her to be like, um there's not even like a family hug. They all like hold hands separately, and then they say bye. And I was like, I don't even know what like Rachel Weisz and David Harbour is supposed to do now. At least Elena has a mission to free the other widows, which I liked. I thought that was a really cool way to set her up. But I don't know. At this point, I'm just waiting for a Black Widow 2 about them trying to find the widows, or like a show, because there was like no closure at all. I feel to at least the rest of the widow family. It was just a I'll see you later type thing.
Right. Right. I feel like they take a while on that scene, and General Ross somehow takes forever to get there after we get that first shot,
Right.
which I think is like a fix you could have made in editing. But I think if they had just had that, they get away, and then it's a quieter scene away from the action.
Yeah.
It's Natasha's going to leave to go find her other family,
Mhm.
and it's kind of that accepting that adopted family that she had back in Ohio,
Yeah.
that she does care for them and they are family for her. Like I feel like I don't know. I just feel like restructuring stuff really could have helped this film. This film feels like it was one or two drafts away from really being
Yeah.
a great movie, because you can see the potential, and it's a good story, but it feels like it could have been elevated just more, a little bit
Right.
more.
The final scene should have not been with Mason, as good as he is in a small bit. It should have been with the family, and the farewell should have been to them, instead of like, oh, we just flew out of a flying fortress that was hurtling towards the ground, but I'll take this. I'll say goodbye now, instead of like doing whatever she did. Um, yeah, I don't know. And like um it was just a very like, I feel like they realized they were at the end of the story, and they were like, let's just take everything else we need to do, and we'll just push it all together in the last 5 minutes and call it a day. um I don't know. It was, I see what they were trying to do the whole movie. Really, I just wish it was just, yeah, a matter of restructuring, rewriting, just maybe putting characters in different areas. um we didn't even talk about the the fortress coming apart and them flying through the sky. I didn't like any of that. I don't know if you
I
were.
was I was a fan.
I was fine. Okay.
I will say I was a fan of, once they're in the sky falling down, I was a fan.
Okay, that's fair. Because like I was, even when the first trailer came out, I was scared of that sequence, because I was like, oh, her jumping off from like rubble to rubble, like, will it look good? Um, I thought, yeah, the free fall fight was cool. I just think the build up where they're like running and like everything is exploding kind of took me out. And just for I don't know. It was at that point I was like, there's already so much I still have to process from 10 minutes ago. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the third act just very busy, very
I,
busy third
I
act.
I agree, and I think that whole once the ship's exploding and they have to escape takes a little bit too long.
Yeah, that was a little.
Um, and I feel like they're scared to kill characters.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a really impactful moment for Rachel Weisz to
Mhm.
go come full circle, right?
Yeah.
From exposing them to the Red Room to
Yeah.
being the one who says, I'm going to take the Red Room down because I am responsible for this, right?
Yeah.
In that moment where Florence Pugh, it just felt like that was very much supposed to be Rachel Weisz's character's moment. But I also understand because it feels like you have two characters that you need to give a full arc to, and it's kind of impossible to give both. So I get why Florence Pugh did it, and I think
Yeah.
I think that might be an unfair critique
No,
or nitpick, but I
I
think
got
it's
you.
somewhere walking that line.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's why I'm anticipating Black Widow the series or Black Widow 2 to be announced any day now because there's no way they're like I've never seen more open-ended like potential from Elena, Red Guardian, and Rachel Weisz. So I'm hoping at any day because like I did enjoy their performances, and I think now we have a whole foundation, a whole movie foundation to build off of. So um, I'm hoping like at any point soon they're like, yeah, we're taking them on another adventure.
Yeah. I think we'll the post credit scene, and we'll wrap this up because this has
Yeah.
been a long review for us. Yelena Belova is talking with Valentina, who we saw in The Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And it's a hit on Hawkeye. And just so you guys know, yes, this is a setup for the Hawkeye series. Yes, Yelena Belova will be appearing in the Hawkeye series. That's been, I don't know if it's been technically confirmed, but we know it from
Yeah.
reporting that she's in the series. So that's what that is setting up. As far as a Black Widow 2, I think it's possible. I think they're going to need to build up Yelena Belova's character more. And I think that Hawkeye series is a good spot to do that before you would announce the possibility of a Black Widow 2. I just think you need to get that hype from one level up to another. And I think a Hawkeye series where you just are able to explore that character in the television side will really help. Like the Falcon as Captain America, that announcement as Cap 4 without that series wouldn't have been exciting. Now it's really exciting, and I think the same thing can be the case even if she's just a supporting character in Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Nick, are there anything else, or do you think we've kind of covered everything?
No, I think as a final recap, like I feel like I've been hard at least on this movie, but like I mean I did enjoy it. I could see myself rewatching this in the future, but just the film itself and the surrounding circumstances of this is the OG six Avengers and she's getting a movie after her death. It just feels like I like in a context way I'd forget about this or I wouldn't be like don't care as much, but like for Florence Pugh, for some of the cool action and like just revisiting these characters in particular because I think they are like very interesting, well acted bunch. I mean, I would check it out again. It just seems a bit like forgettable within larger context of things, especially with like all the madness of Loki right now and like Shang-Chi coming up in a few months. It just feels like a kind of like in a weird state. Weird occupies a weird place right now.
It does. I agree. And I think if the story had come out when it was originally supposed to, I don't think my critiques would be different, but I think the impact of parts of this film may feel more fresh than they do now.
Right.
And yeah, I just think as much as we critique this film, if you guys haven't noticed, we don't really review films that we think are bad on the channel. It's not very often that we do that. So, a lot of this stuff, we went heavy on the critique side, but I think there is a ton of positives to take out of Black Widow. It's an immensely fun movie, and it's a fun ride. I saw it with my dad, and my dad definitely enjoyed it. Um, and it hits a lot of the Marvel tropes that I think sometimes hold them back and frustrate us as we get older viewers get older as viewers
Yeah.
to like push a film to the next level. But there is a remarkable level of consistency of just entertainment and enjoyment that these films have as my camera shuts off.
No, I understand. And yeah, I don't know. I think at the very least, it was something that was, I could see why this was intended to be the original start of Phase 4, just as like the branch between old guard, new guard. I think it's just awkward now coming after all the shifts with the shows and what's coming. But I mean, it was a solidly entertaining thing. If I do get a chance to see it at some point in the next few weeks in theaters, I wouldn't mind doing it again.
And some of the action sequences in that final third act is really cool to see in theaters because the CG holds up spectacularly. So I would highly recommend, and I would go see it in theaters. Of course, if you made it this far, you've already seen it.
Mhm.
Um, but with that, let us know in the comment section below. What did you think? Do you completely disagree with our feedback on the film and our thoughts? Let us know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.